Okay, tournament football, 2 playoff semi-finals, no goals. So it's beautifully poised, as you said, Sam. But for us to be beautifully poised, we had to go through some less than interesting semi-final first legs. I'm sure the word cagey is going to come up as we're chatting this. So what we'll do, Sam, we'll have a bit of a chin wag. We won't go too long on the games over the weekend, but I'm sure everyone's eager to talk about what's going to happen on Thursday and Friday. Sam, you were working on commentary for Southampton v West Brom. I was at Norwich versus Leeds. Which one should we get out of the way first?
Should we do West Brom, Southampton?
Talk to me.
Yeah, I think I possibly had the better end of the deal here, having watched the latter stages of Norwich Leeds on a screen at the studio I was at. I thought it started really brightly. I thought West Brom started really brightly, and I thought Southampton struggled to get into their rhythm. And I apportioned quite a lot of that down to the new system. I say the new system, the system that was trialled at Ellen Road in the final game of the season, league season. Went with the 3 centre-halves again. And I just felt that it meant that there was less passing options. Obviously, they've taken a forward player out of the lineup, if you like. So that rhythm and that consistency that we've seen from Southampton in the way they want to play and dominate the ball, it wasn't really evident. There was quite a few uncharacteristic mistakes from the defenders when they were trying to keep possession and trying to progress the ball up the pitch. So I thought that was really evident early on. I think West Brom seized on that and caused quite a few problems from the outset. But like the Norwich Leeds game, it kind of plateaued. I think it's fascinating going into the second leg if Che Adams is going to be fit. I think that was a miss for Southampton. On the flip side, good to see Ross Stewart getting a few minutes, and I don't think the kind of gamble with Mara going up top with Adam Armstrong particularly paid off, considering he was very much on the periphery of the game. So I would expect there to be a change in that forward line, and I'd probably expect there to be a possible change in the shape as well, due to that lack of creativity that I just described. What it did do though, Ben, and I think West Brom showed evidence that they like to put balls in the box. Obviously, from set pieces, they're really dangerous. Carl Bartley having a few opportunities, but in the main, the back three did defend the box pretty well for Southampton. So I think from that perspective, it worked.
Well, actually, just crosses, ball, head it, kick it, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, the additional body in there, I think when West Brom got to the byline or got into wide positions, there's only the one chance for Iain Garner that I can recall, which was probably the biggest moment of the game. Fellows down the right-hand side, lovely bit of skill, 2 outstanding balls he put in throughout the game. One for Iain Garner to force a save from McCarthy, and one in the second half that wasn't attacked at all, which was such a waste because of he produced a delicious delivery. So, yeah, in the main, I think the back three helped Southampton defend, but I think they lost something creatively in that shape. So, absolutely something to watch there ahead of the second leg. And I just felt West Brom, really solid in their shape. And it was just whether Johnston on one side or Fellows on the other side could create something on the break. And they very nearly did. That said, I'll be surprised if Thomas Asante starts in that second leg. I think maybe Jed Wallace comes back in and they reconfigure that front line, because he was disappointing. And listen, he'd probably take the 0-0 again, wouldn't he, Corberan? But I think they need to have a little bit more invention and probably a little bit more threat going forward if they can believe they can get through in normal time.
I thought it was a great save with the feet from that deflected shot from Stewart. I thought that was in, Sam.
Yeah, that was the kind of biggest minute, 30 seconds of the game, wasn't it? Iain Garner at one end, for such a talented player, nice left-footed player. When it was cut back to him, I think it was Fellows again, I just expected Iain Garner to bend it left-footed towards the far corner, and he opted for power. McCarthy made a a relatively straightforward save, and then down the other end straight away, Stewart afforded too much space. I think it was Bartley and Furlong just so slow to go out and engage him. I think expecting that the offside flag was going to go up, and obviously the effort I think deflected, and Palmer did well to save with his legs. But that was it really from a Southampton perspective. That and a Flynn Downs effort in the first half. So yeah, there was not much, and I thought it was interesting. Corbrand going to the back three late on. I don't know if you noticed that, but he made a multitude of changes, and he went to a back five in essence, and quite unusual seeing a manager in a home leg of a playoffs essentially declaring with 10 minutes to go, do you know what? The 0-0 will do us on today.
Yeah. So Norwich Leeds. I mean, when the team news came in, Sam, I saw that Johnny Rowe was starting for Norwich, so that kind of boded well. We were sort of trying to pick out what Daniel Farke was doing because there appeared not to be a number 10 unless the number 10 was going to be Archie Gray. And it turned out that he was kind of a number 10, but very much like you're saying in this game, just a little defensive tweak in the shape, not the philosophy, but in the shape, just for an extra body. Russ Martin's obviously done it in terms of a centre half, and Daniel Farke did it in terms of a midfielder. I thought Norwich were the better side for the first 30 minutes, and had they scored in that, then here we go with, Leeds then trying to get back into the game. And you used the word declared in your analysis. I totally agree. You're normally looking at about 75, 80 minutes. It felt a little bit like, okay, are we just going to the second leg here and making this a one-off? There's a couple of incidents. Josh Sargent had a header where the defender's touch tight and he puts it wide. Somerville had one, but Angus Gunn stood up well on the near post. There was a penalty shout early on, which was probably just outside, and there was a real tight offside, but there was nothing in it, Sam. And to your point, David Wagner said in his post-game press conference, he said, we said a couple of things. He said, drawing the first game at home is not necessarily a bad thing. And then he said, because of that, every single minute you play in the away leg and it's still level goes in your favour. So I don't know whether he's telling you immediately there he wants penalties. But before we go on to Thursday and Friday, what's your sort of take on the Norwich Leeds side of the ledger?
I suppose a little bit of surprise that Leeds have opted to change the setup a little bit after having, for the majority of the season success. It strikes to me that all is not perfect there, that they're, working maybe on the training ground on slightly different setup. So that was interesting,
Sam. It was the slightest tweak.
Yeah, but you've got quite a lot of goal threat, haven't you, with it, either Bamford or, if you could get James in there, Piru, you could reconfigure it with Nonto maybe as a 10, James wide. There's lots of things he could have done, but that was quite a conservative move, I suppose. I think for Norwich, give or take, that's probably their best 11, maybe Ashley Barnes aside. So that was a pretty front foot side that they put out. And obviously there were some different dynamics to the way that Leeds went about it. Gruev dropping deep in between the centre halves, as you said, Archie Gray going quite high. So it was a different setup, but yeah, you just worry about their lack of threat, don't you, I suppose, at the moment, and the indifferent form of
Can't believe we're
Ruta.
saying that. I can't believe that, because they were the one we said had the most goal threat throughout the season, didn't we?
Yeah, I thought it was a foul on Nonto, but you're right. Whether it was in or out, I'm not too sure. The initial collision was maybe just outside, so they were unfortunate on that. And the offside is, if it is offside, and it looked to be from the Sky cameras, Daniel Farke was talking about the scouting view, which I presume means the view from the top of the stand.
Nice scout,
But yeah, so they were unfortunate one of those didn't go their way. But yeah, in the main, there was very, very little between the two sides, and it's kind of what I anticipated. I thought maybe Norwich would edge it. They had the one chance through Josh Sargent, and that was it really. Considering they've had that brilliant home run, yeah, you'd make Leeds slight favourites, but it's very, very slight.
Well, let's talk about these second legs then. Someone asked a great question as well, and you can put this, Sam, on both Southampton and Leeds now. One game at home. Do they stick with their new shapes and ride it out for the whole 180 minutes? Or it could be 210 if there's extra time, couldn't it? Or, because I bet you what you like, either of those sides go behind, they're going to go back to the 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 shape, aren't they?
Yeah, the Southampton one was interesting because early on, Jack Stevens, who was playing a left-sided centre half, he was the one that was going into midfield. So he was the one that was kind of,
he did that when they played in a 4, though, Sam, and he was playing left back.
Yeah, obviously Carl Walker-Peters and Manning, normally one of them goes in there, sometimes two. But Stevens was doing it early on, but actually that kind of subsided as the game went on. I'd be very surprised if they didn't go back to the 4-3-3. It feels, again, like it's a more conservative setup, the one they had the other day. I think maybe Adam Armstrong off the right, which he's played for the majority of the seasons, and if Che Adams is fit, he'd come in back down the middle, and then you've got a number of options on the left-hand side with Mara probably could play wide, Fraser, Adozie, Brooks even you could probably have there. So yeah, I'd be very surprised. Leeds, I think that's probably tougher to call, just because there isn't, those informed players, is there, at the top end of the pitch. But I think just because they've had such success during the home games playing that way, I would be surprised if he stuck at this. That must have been, in my mind, the setup for the away game and the away game only. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's at a risk of making the game too open. I don't think that would be the case. I think with the two holders, they have been too open in that midfield. So maybe you can make the argument that Gray plays at fullback or comes and impacts it off the bench, and you go with Gruev and Kamara from the off. That would make more sense to me rather than approaching a home game at Ellen Road where the fans are going to be expecting you to be on the front foot, playing with three midfielders who aren't really goal threats. That would definitely surprise me.
Well, let's look at Thursday night first then. So, I mean, if I'm playing this out in my head, what would a Leeds win look like? Either they click and they get roared on and they win by a couple of goals, or very nervy, very tight, and someone scores in the 65th minute and sees it through. The draw, and then into extra time feels like the same game again, with Norwich maybe sitting in from the word go rather than sort of starting on the front foot as they did. And the Norwich away win, we all know what that looks like. That's sit in, nick a goal, sit in some more, isn't it, Sam? And then, extra time, penalties. You almost start to feel if it goes past and into extra time towards penalties, because it's Ellen Road and that place gets a little bit nervy, doesn't it? And because it's David Wagner who's won these two penalty shootouts before, you almost think, and he's right with his comments in the press conference, if it goes past 90 minutes, are you starting to side with Norwich on the penalties?
Yeah, quite possibly. I just think this is going to be more of the same. I could see it being penalties, absolutely. Yeah, if I was to hedge my bets now, I'd probably say it might be level after 90 minutes and we'll either get a goal in extra time or we'll go all the way. I said, last week, to a little bit of derision, I think, in certain quarters. I saw a couple of comments that, how can I be saying that this is on such a knife edge with the points difference between the two sides during the season?
Well, it was.
Yeah, it was. And I think you have to factor in the form Leeds are in. You have to factor in the loss of confidence in some of the players, especially those forward ones, and you have to take the recent results and recent defeats into consideration. So that's where we are. That's why we are where we are. Nothing between the two sides. So yeah, I think again this could be decided by one goal.
So I'll go for the first thing I said. Leeds in normal time, 1-0, but nervy as hell. Do you know what I mean? There's just nothing in it, and might even be like a muggy goal or something. You know, corner goes in and gets bimbled over the line. So that's what I'll go for. I'll go for Leeds to qualify, nervy as hell in 90 minutes. What you got a prediction for me, Sam?
Yeah, I'll give you a prediction. Can I take the draw then? I'll take the draw and I'll take Leeds on spot kicks.
Wow. Mate, honestly, I've always said about Elland Road, because I was there at that Derby semi-final. I've always said it's like a massive big thing in their favour, but that's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in a football stadium before. Just the collapse of the team, the players, everybody together with the nerves so I just don't know how that. If we got Leeds fans in the chat, I don't know if there's been penalty shootouts there. Before,
I lost the penalty shootout at that home end, so there's a method to my madness there.
Penalty shootout at Leeds?
Yeah, for Swindon in the League Cup. So
no way.
The game that Paul Robinson scored the header in. So I struck a really bad penalty and it hit the inside of the post and cannoned in off Paul Robinson. So I did somehow manage to get mine over the line. But yeah, I take what your point about Wagner, absolutely, and penalty shootouts. And that does worry me a little bit. But I just think maybe that crowd and that pressure may just impact Norwich.
Daniel Farker has said in about his last 100 press conferences, this is a young team, this is a young team, this is a young team, over and over and over again. Just quickly, Sam, penalty shootout, do you go up first?
I think I did go up first. Yeah, I'd normally go first or fifth because I was taking quite a lot of penalties around that time, but I didn't like it. I was never a great penalty taker, to be honest. I was a reluctant penalty taker. Right foot hit the left-hand post as we're looking at it and cannoning off Robinson. So yeah, we shall see.
Like it. Okay, let's go down to St. Mary's, which I think will hopefully be a bit more open. You know, I'm putting this on Russ Martin's shoulders, Sam, on the basis it's just not his thing to lock up and defend, is it? So you saw the whole thing and commentated on it. How'd you see the second leg going?
I think that it would be a big surprise to me if there wasn't changes for Southampton. I think he'll probably go back to the flat back four. That's my feeling. I suppose he could play the two up, couldn't he? He could play the same system like the 3-5-2 and play Che Adams and Adam Armstrong if they're available. I mean, that would be a massive blow if Che Adams isn't available, because I think Russell Martin said that he's been kind of in his best form the last few weeks of the season. He's really been at it. But you could do that. But I just like Adam Armstrong off the right-hand side. I think he gives you such a goal threat off there. Then you can get another wide player in. The two number 8s, if you like, I know they've really missed Stuart Armstrong over the last couple of weeks. I think he was arguably one of their best players this season, maybe along with Adam Armstrong and Bednarek. So to not have him available, you need a bit more from Smallbone and Aribo. We saw flashes from Aribo the other day. But yeah, I would anticipate them going back to the 4-3-3. That's my hunch. For West Brom, I can't see there being too many changes in setup or probably in the game approach. I just think maybe Thomas Asante seems to be lacking a little bit of confidence. So maybe Jed Wallace comes in there. And I'd probably keep the rest the same as it is if they've avoided injury the other day. And I think they'll approach it in the same manner. I think they'll be resolute. They'll be deep set. they'll hope to maybe get something from a set piece or get something through one of those wide players. And maybe introduce Swift, Thomas Asante and the like later in the game. So I can't see anything changing other than maybe the Southampton kind of starting formation, maybe the reintroduction of Adams. And I expect them to dominate the football probably in a different way to what we saw at the Hawthorns, where they just struggled for that rhythm. They struggled for that kind of domination of the ball, which they really, really want to fatigue the opponent to moving around. And I'd anticipate that bit to be more evident in the second game.
Okay. I feel like shaking it up on these predictions here because it feels too obvious to have Leeds and Southampton in the final, doesn't it? So let's, for no reason other than that, I'll back West Brom, but I'll back West Brom to do it in extra time. And you've given me my narrative there. He always brings Swift on with 15 to go or whatever. So let's have him coming on with 5 to go, knowing that extra time's coming. And a Corberon masterclass. So I'll go extra time, but West Brom winning it 1-0. What say you, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so torn. It could go either way. You can make a strong case for Norwich here. You can make a strong case for West Bromwich Albion. I think it's more likely that Southampton get through by scoring and Leeds maybe have to go all the way. That's the narrative I've built this morning, just because I think there's more informed strikers, confident forward players in Southampton's ranks maybe than at Ellen Road at the moment. So for that reason, I'm going to go for Southampton to nick it, maybe 1-0, 2-1, normal time.
So both Sam and I have gone for the caginess to continue. No, none of this normal glorious playoff, 3-4 goals in each game. We'll clip this one out and stick it up. So let us know your takes down there in the comments. And we will revisit next week when we know who has qualified for Wembley for the whatever. They had 30 million on every year, don't they, Sam? Let's call it the £200 million game.